the historical letter from the Roman governor who ordered Jesus' crucifixion. Imagine discovering a historical letter written by none other than Pontius Pilate, the Roman governor who ordered Jesus' crucifixion. How would you react upon learning that he deeply regretted his role in Christ's death? Yet Pilate sent a letter to the Roman governor Tiberius, detailing not only the trial and crucifixion of Jesus, but also something incredible, his resurrection. Within this account, Pilate describes the physical appearance of Jesus, revealing details not present in the Gospels. This video will bring that discovery to light, translating the contents of this letter and what it says about Jesus. I invite you to watch the video attentively and draw your own conclusions about what Pilate told the emperor about the Son of God. Stay until the end to discover one of the most intriguing descriptions of Jesus, a rare and detailed portrayal. But first, leave your like, subscribe if you haven't already, and activate the button to be notified of our upcoming videos. Now, let's get to the letter. The letter begins with a formal greeting from Pontius Pilate to Tiberius Caesar. Pilate recounts the appearance of an extraordinary man during his time, a man of unmatched virtue called Jesus Christ, who still walked among them and was widely recognized as a prophet of truth. However, his own disciples called him the Son of God, believing he was capable of doing the impossible, resurrecting the dead and healing all kinds of diseases. As you read these words, imagine the impact this account had on Tiberius, a Roman governor within his jurisdiction, testifying about a man with such extraordinary powers and whose presence left a profound impression on those who encountered him. Pilate mentions that despite being admired by many, Jesus aroused envy among religious leaders, culminating in the tragic events that led to his trial and crucifixion. It is at this point that the description becomes fascinating. Pilate recounts in detail the physical appearance of Jesus, as if wanting to immortalize his image so that anyone reading it could recognize him if they met him in person or heard other accounts. Jesus is described as a tall man with a striking presence and a countenance that inspired both love and fear. His physiognomy was unique, and anyone who looked at him felt an almost reverent respect. The description continues, revealing that Jesus' hair was the color of ripe chestnut, naturally falling to his shoulders. Not content with merely mentioning these features, Pilate notes that on top of his head there was a natural division in the hair, similar to the style of the Nazarenes, reinforcing his distinct and culturally significant image. Jesus' forehead, according to Pilate, was flat and very delicate, reflecting uncommon softness. His face, surprisingly, had no blemish or wrinkle, as if his skin was protected from imperfections, and the faint blush adorning his countenance made his appearance even more harmonious. With a keen eye, Pilate describes Jesus' nose and mouth, highlighting that they were perfectly proportional and shaped in a way that nothing could be criticized. He mentions Jesus' beard, thick and with the same tone as his hair, slightly forked and not very long. Details like these were important for the reader of that time to have a clear image in mind, an image that would withstand time and be recognized by anyone who had the opportunity to see him. But it is in the eyes that Pilate truly immerses us in a unique description. He recounts that Jesus' eyes were gray, clear, and bright, conveying an intensity that seemed to reach the depths of every person he met. These eyes had an innate ability to disapprove without the need for words, with just a simple look. It was as if Jesus' eyes held ancient wisdom, capable of conveying calm and firmness at the same time. Pilate mentions that despite being extremely compassionate, Jesus had a noble demeanor that conveyed maturity and respect. According to Pilate, Jesus was a serious man, yet kind and approachable, and his words were tempered with wisdom. He was someone of few laughs, but often wept, reinforcing the image of a deeply sensitive man concerned with those around him. The letter continues, and Pilate delves further into Jesus' character and personality. He describes Jesus as a man whose singular beauty set him apart from all others. He seemed to surpass in grace and appearance all men. Pilate notes that Jesus' hands and arms were especially pleasing to behold, details that further enhance the image of a serene and compassionate figure whose presence alone was enough to inspire respect and admiration in those who observed him. According to Pilate's account, his experience with Jesus was marked by his reserved yet extremely eloquent demeanor. When questioned about his religious beliefs, Jesus responded with serenity and without hesitation. He told Pilate, "I am a king, but my kingdom is not of this world." These mysterious and meaningful words certainly left an impact on the governor, making it clear that he was facing someone whose convictions transcended the physical realm and earthly powers. Pilate, impressed by Jesus' firmness and humility, decided to question him about his divine identity. He asked if he was a god, to which Jesus replied with wisdom and simplicity, "You say that I am, because I am the truth and the life." This profound response echoed in Pilate's mind, who perceived that Jesus was not an ordinary man. He was someone with an understanding and vision of worlds uncommon. However, the political situation and growing tension between the Jewish people and the Romans put Pilate in a delicate position. He recounts in the letter that the turmoil in the city intensified, and the pressure from the religious leaders for Jesus' condemnation only increased. But, although reluctant, Pilate felt that he needed to yield to the pressure to avoid an uprising in Jerusalem. He mentions that, in ordering Jesus' crucifixion, he did so in an attempt to ensure peace and stability in the city. Then, upon giving the command for the crucifixion, something extraordinary happened. The sky darkened, the sun ceased to shine, and the stars appeared in broad daylight, as if nature itself was reacting to the injustice. Pilate mentions in the letter that, at that moment, he felt a great weight on his conscience and hurried to wash his hands, symbolizing that he did not want to be responsible for the blood of a just man. This act of Pilate washing his hands marked history, symbolizing the intention to distance himself from the condemnation of an innocent. Yet he knew that this gesture would not erase what had been done. Pilate describes the crucifixion as a moment when the world seemed to stop, and even the dead in their tombs were seen by many as if resurrected. What he witnessed that day was unprecedented. He concludes this part of the account by explaining that, although he fulfilled his political responsibility, something inside him was never the same. The memory of Jesus, his gaze, his calm demeanor, and his message of love and justice would continue to astonish him. And it is here that we reach one of the most intriguing points of the letter. Pilate's description of Jesus was extremely detailed and revealing. In an era without photography or portraits, Pilate's account allowed any reader of that time to visualize the unique figure of Jesus as if standing before him. What is most impressive is the fact that this description comes from someone who, in theory, had no personal reason to delve into the details, except for the admiration and impact Jesus left. Now Pilate recounts the days that followed the crucifixion. He mentions that rumors arose in Jerusalem, rumors that Jesus had resurrected. This reached Pilate's ears, who, intrigued and somewhat concerned, sent soldiers to investigate the tomb. But the tomb was empty. Rumors said that Jesus had appeared to several people, including his disciples, and had ascended to the heavens. Pilate mentions that upon hearing this, he felt a mix of fear and curiosity, as he had never seen or heard of anything similar. As the letter continues, Pilate expresses his confused feelings. He knew that Jesus was not an ordinary man, but a being whose words and actions transcended human understanding. The impact of his brief interaction with Jesus transformed his worldview, and he concludes the letter suggesting that maybe the story he witnessed in Jerusalem would alter the fate of humanity forever. After recounting these extraordinary events, Pilate begins to describe the political situation and the growing tension he felt while governing Judea. He admits that Jerusalem was one of the most difficult cities to control, and that due to the turbulent nature of its people, he lived in constant fear of a revolution. He recounts that his predecessor, Valerius Gratus, also faced many challenges, and warned Pilate about the unpredictable character of Jerusalem's inhabitants. With insufficient soldiers and little assistance from the Roman government, Pilate found himself in a precarious position. He reflects that the unchecked expansion of the Roman Empire might eventually be its own downfall, as the conquered territory exceeded the capacity of Roman military forces to defend and control it. This lack of resources and growing public pressure created a situation where Pilate felt cornered, forced to make difficult decisions like the one that led to Jesus' crucifixion. At one point in the letter, Pilate recounts a striking episode when he first heard about Jesus, a young man of celestial appearance who preached a new teaching in the name of the gods who sent him. He admits that initially he feared that Jesus might incite the people against the Romans, but soon realized that his words carried a message of peace and reconciliation. To Pilate, this was surprising. He noted that Jesus seemed more a friend to the Romans than to the Jews, and this attitude made him feel less threatened. One day, while passing by the pool of Siloam, Pilate saw a group of people gathered, and among them a calm man, leaning against a tree and speaking quietly. Upon asking who he was informed that it was Jesus. He describes the scene as unforgettable. The contrast between Jesus, with his fair skin and golden hair, and the people around him of darker appearance, was impressive. Pilate states he had never seen anyone with such a serene and gentle expression as Jesus, whose presence seemed to radiate an indescribable peace. This description, which Pilate provides with such detail, is possibly the only documented account of Jesus' appearance outside of the Gospels. He mentions that Jesus' golden hair and beard gave him an almost celestial appearance. This detail has caught the attention of scholars over the years, as it raises questions about the accuracy of this description. Could it really be possible that Jesus had these features, or was it just a later addition made by the letter's copyists? Regardless of these doubts, Pilate records this almost mystical vision of Jesus, a man who appeared to be about 30 years old and whose physiognomy was so different from his contemporaries that he seemed to belong to another world. He reinforces this image of Jesus as a special figure, possessing a spiritual beauty that transcends any other description. Returning to the account, Pilate mentions that, as tempted as he was to approach Jesus to speak with him, he avoided interrupting the moment. Instead, he instructed his secretary Manalis to join the crowd and listen to what Jesus had to say. Manalis, who was a trusted man of Pilate and knowledgeable in the Hebrew language, returned to the praetorium to report the words spoken by Jesus. And according to him, he had never heard anything so profound and wise, not even in the works of Rome's most respected philosophers. One of the examples Manalis narrated to Pilate was the response Jesus gave to one of the Jewish rebels who asked if it was right to pay tribute to Caesar. Jesus replied, "Give to Caesar what is Caesar's and to God what is God's." These words, in addition to carrying political wisdom, revealed a sense of justice that touched Pilate. He saw in Jesus a man who, despite his popularity, was neither revolutionary nor threatening to the Roman Empire. Because of that wisdom and Jesus' serene demeanor, Pilate decided to grant him freedom to teach and gather disciples without any restriction from the Roman government. He believed that by allowing Jesus to continue his path, he was promoting peace and avoiding conflicts. However, this decision caused indignation among the religious leaders of the time, who saw Jesus as a threat to their own authority. Pilate recounts that complaints against Jesus became frequent in the Praetorium. The religious leaders could not accept his free presence and growing popularity, and threatened to make a direct appeal to Caesar if Pilate did not take action. Despite this pressure, Pilate remained firm in his decision, as he saw no reason to detain Jesus. He believed that exiling or accusing him without justification would be contrary to the principles of justice that the Romans upheld. However, Pilate recounts that the tense atmosphere in Jerusalem continued to grow, and upon realizing that an insurrection was imminent, he took an extreme measure to restore peace, even if it meant yielding to the pressures of the religious leaders. He felt that he could not allow a conflict to intensify in his province, and thus finally decided to condemn Jesus, not for finding guilt in him, but to avoid a larger crisis. Pilate continues to recount in the letter his final decision and the consequences it brought for him and for Jerusalem. He acknowledges that despite his role as the Roman governor, his authority was forced by the circumstances, and the pressure from the religious leaders and the people led him to do something that he knew deep down to be unjust. Pilate reveals that he felt like a powerless spectator during Jesus' trial, while the religious leaders insisted that he was a threat to Judaism and the Jewish people. Even so, he still attempted one last alternative, offering the people a choice between Jesus and a known prisoner, Barabbas. His intention was for the crowd to prefer to free Jesus. To his surprise and despair, the people chose to save Barabbas, a criminal, and condemn Jesus. Witnessing this choice, Pilate understood that there was something deeper at play, something he might never fully comprehend. At that moment, he decided to publicly wash his hands, a symbolic gesture that the decision to condemn Jesus to crucifixion was not entirely his. However, he knew that the moral responsibility for that action would haunt him. Pilate mentions that giving the final order for the crucifixion, he felt a devastating burden, as if he were breaking with something greater than himself. The memory of Jesus' gaze, his serenity before the furious crowd, remained vivid in his mind. Soon after the execution, mysterious and inexplicable events occurred, according to Pilate. He recounts that a deep darkness covered the city at noon, something he had never witnessed. The sun vanished from the sky, and stars appeared in broad daylight, while the moon seemed full of blood. This darkness left the population terrified, and the atmosphere was of supernatural unease. Some of the dead, Pilate says, were seen emerging from their tombs and walking among the living. These signs seemed to indicate that the whole world was responding to Jesus' death. These events deeply shook Pilate, who felt a heavy guilt settling in his conscience. He realized that the act of washing his hands would not be enough to free him from the weight of what he had done. Pilate mentions in the letter that the impact of Jesus' crucifixion was so great that it seemed to have changed the course of history. And he believed that these events would be remembered for generations, even without fully understanding Jesus' mission. He knew that the significance of his death surpassed any understanding. The letter then enters a personal reflection of Pilate on his own life and his role in the administration of Jerusalem. He reveals that after the crucifixion, the city seemed enveloped in a strange melancholy, and rumors about Jesus' resurrection began circulating among the population. Some said that Jesus had appeared to his followers, while others claimed he was seen by many before ascending to heaven. Pilate, incredulous but intrigued, could not ignore these stories. To try to understand what had really happened, he ordered the soldiers to go to Jesus' tomb, where, according to reports, he had been buried. However, the tomb was empty. The soldiers reported that the stone sealing the tomb had been removed and Jesus' body was no longer there. This mystery led Pilate to question himself deeply, as he knew there was no logical explanation for the disappearance of the body. At the end of his letter, Pilate expresses a mix of regret and fascination. He perceives that Jesus' figure was incomparable, and somehow his brief time in Jerusalem had left an indelible mark on all who encountered it, including himself. Pilate admits that looking back, his life had been transformed by the brief encounter with Jesus, and he would never be the same again. Pilate's testimony then ends with a confession that, despite fulfilling his duty as governor, something in his heart had changed forever. He felt that perhaps he had stood before someone extraordinary, a being whose mission transcended any earthly power. And with that perception, he concludes his letter to Tiberius, suggesting that what happened in Jerusalem would not be forgotten, and that, over time, perhaps the Roman Empire itself would come to recognize the importance of Jesus. This testimony about the resurrection and the possible immortality of Jesus' message shows the impact it had, even on his adversaries. Pilate's letter thus became proof not only of Jesus' existence, but that in essence, he was much more than a man. Now, concluding his letter to Tiberius, Pilate addresses a curious artifact that, in a way, solidified his position in history: the Pilate stone. This artifact was discovered centuries later near the theater of Caesarea Maritima, in the region where Pilate governed. It's an inscription on stone mentioning his name, Pontius Pilate, prefect of Judea, and dedicating that space to Emperor Tiberius. Although the artifact was found well after his time, it represents concrete archaeological evidence of Pilate's presence in that region, connecting history with reality. Returning to the central theme, Pilate reflects that his testimony about Jesus might come to be questioned or ignored by the powers of Rome. He expresses his feeling of having witnessed something greater than his own understanding, something he could not control. The letter becomes an appeal to Tiberius, not to seek explanations, but to recognize that the events in Jerusalem were unique and perhaps deserved to be preserved in memory. Over the centuries, this letter, like the Pilate stone, became an object of study and reflection for those seeking historical evidence about Jesus. The details of Jesus' appearance described by Pilate were passed down through generations as a rare representation of what his physiognomy was like. His golden hair, piercing eyes, and majestic demeanor, combined with his humility and wisdom, are traits that are still recognized and revered today. The letter ends with a note of reflection from Pilate on the impact of his decision. He suggests to Tiberius that the rumors of the resurrection and the stories about Jesus should not be ignored, as they seem to carry a deeper truth. He knew that the story of Jesus' crucifixion would not disappear, and that the simple man, condemned to avoid an uprising, was destined for a much greater role. With this last thought, he closes his narrative, as if presenting that his own life was forever marked by Jesus' presence on his path. Thus, the Pilate stone and the letter are much more than mere historical relics. They are testimonies that Jesus truly lived and left an indelible impression, not only on those who followed him, but also on those who participated, directly or indirectly, in his trial. And today, knowing the contents of this letter, we can understand how a Roman governor in an ethical and political dilemma became one of the first to recognize the depth and uniqueness of the figure of Jesus Christ. Leave your opinion in the comments about the video's topic, always respecting others' opinions. I hope you enjoyed the video. It takes a lot of work to make, and all the information is carefully selected. All I ask in return is that you support me by leaving your like and activating the button so you don't miss any of our upcoming videos. Share this video with someone who is also on this faith journey. Now feel free to click on the video appearing on your screen and continue your journey in the pursuit of salvation. Thank you for being here, and may God bless you.